The flashing lights behind him didn't make sense at first. There had been no speeding, no swerving, just a steady cruise down Highway 83. But here they were, glowing red and blue in his mirror, tailing his black Lexus. Anthony slowed down and pulled over. It was late. He was almost at his hotel in Macon, Georgia, just 10 minutes away. The next morning, he had meetings with city officials. His leather briefcase sat on the passenger seat, iced coffee in the holder, and the hum of the highway fading behind him. He hadn't broken a single law, but he already knew why he'd been stopped. 2 officers stepped out of the patrol car. One spun his flashlight in his hand, the other adjusted his belt as if getting ready for a show. They walked toward him with that slow, confident posture of men who never expect to be questioned. Anthony murmured, "Of course." The taller one approached first. Badge red Henshaw, around 40, tight jaw, and the kind of eyes that had never looked far beyond his hometown. His partner, stockier with a military-style buzz cut, circled toward the passenger side. Anthony lowered the window. "License and registration," Henshaw said flatly. Anthony nodded and moved slowly, deliberately. "Sure," he replied, handing over everything. "License, insurance, registration. Where you headed?" Henshaw asked. "Business trip," Anthony said. "Hotel downtown." "Just about there." Daly, the stockier one, glanced into the Lexus and eyed the briefcase. "Bit too polished for a drive through Bibb County, huh?" Anthony gave a polite smile. "State duty. Long stretch." Henshaw looked at the ID again. "Merriweather, that for real?" "It is." He passed the ID to Daly. For a few seconds, neither said anything. Then came the question. "Mind if we take a look inside the car?" "Yes, I do," Anthony said calmly. "Unless you have probable cause." The silence snapped. Daly shifted his stance. Henshaw's tone dropped. "You certain about that?" "Very." "Are we detaining you?" Henshaw asked. "Am I being detained?" Anthony replied evenly. No answer. Just a subtle nod from Henshaw. Daly opened the passenger door and motioned for Anthony to step out. Anthony obeyed, quiet and composed. No sharp movements, no raised voice, just steady breathing and worn patience as he stood on the side of the road. Hands visible, a truck slowed as it passed. The driver stared. Anthony could feel the scrutiny like a weight on his chest. "You say you work for the state," Daly said behind him. "Funny, that gets thrown around a lot, like it means something." Anthony stayed quiet. Henshaw added, "You think wearing a nice shirt and driving this car changes anything?" Still nothing from Anthony. "You're real quiet," Daly sneered. "What's in the case?" "My laptop," Anthony answered softly, "and meeting notes. I'd prefer they not be searched without cause." "You telling us how to do our job?" Henshaw asked. "I'm explaining the law." Henshaw stepped back, shaking his head with a mocking grin. "You're hiding something? Probably drugs? Maybe something picked up on your way in." "I'm not answering that." Daly moved back to the cruiser. Henshaw lingered, eyes narrowed. "Do you ever been in trouble before?" "No." "Ever arrested?" "Never." "You'll wait here while we verify," Henshaw said. Anthony didn't speak. He just stared past the trees, listening to Daly call in his license. The patrol lights continued to flash over the Lexus's glossy frame. Across the street, a woman stepped out of a diner and held up her phone. Henshaw noticed. "Don't even try it. Filming won't help." Anthony locked eyes with him. "Maybe it will." Moments later, Daly returned. "Car checks out. Clean license. Insurance current." Henshaw muttered, "Must be your lucky day." "You're free to go," Daly added coldly. "Watch yourself." "I always do," Anthony replied. He got back into his Lexus, started the engine, and drove off. Not fast, not slow. Just enough. What they didn't know was who they had just stopped. 6 minutes later, he pulled into a private lot behind the Macon Police Department, not the main entrance, but the employee side. Instead of heading inside, he stayed seated, staring out the windshield. He didn't need to collect himself. He'd been through worse. He just needed to think. Then his phone lit up. "Chief Barrington, let me know when you're in. I'll meet you inside." Anthony, parking now, walking in. Inside, the building was quiet. The station smelled faintly of floor wax and old coffee. Officers lingered near desks, chatting about nothing important. Anthony walked in, briefcase in hand. ID clipped to his blazer. At the far end of the room, Daly was fiddling with a broken printer. Henshaw leaned against a wall, sipping coffee from a plastic cup. Their eyes found him at the same moment. Recognition set in slowly, like frost creeping across glass. That face, the same one they'd harassed a little while ago, now walking through their house, not in a Lexus, not in silence, but with authority. A badge, a folder, a presence. Daly's mouth opened slightly. "No way." Henshaw just stared, the cup in his hand hanging limp. Anthony didn't say a word, didn't even acknowledge them, just kept walking. He knocked gently on an office door. "Come in," said a voice inside. Chief Louise Barrington stood as he entered. Former trooper, respected, fair, and the one who'd asked for his transfer. "Anthony," she greeted, smiling. "Glad you're here. You're early." He handed her the folder. "Thought I'd start settling in." "How was the trip?" He paused. "Eventful." She raised an eyebrow. "What kind of eventful?" 2 of your patrol officers pulled me over, harassed me a bit, tried to push boundaries. You're kidding? No, ma'am? Did you get names? I didn't need to. One wears his belt like a trophy. The other smells like burnt coffee. She leaned back in her chair. Henshaw and Daly. Anthony nodded. That's not how this was supposed to start, she said. No, Chief, it's not. Do you want to file? Not yet. First, I want to meet with them today. Unannounced. You sure I won't yell? I won't even raise my voice. I just want to see their faces. When they realize who I am. He smiled faintly. That should be enough for now. Louise gave a quiet nod. Give me an hour. Anthony rose from his seat. I'll wait in the conference room. Out in the hallway, Daly and Henshaw were still lingering near the vending machine. Voices low, faces tense. I'm telling you, it's him, Daly whispered. No way, Henshaw replied. That guy we pulled over? Can't be. You think I forget faces? Daly shot back. Same watch. Same look. It's him. Before Henshaw could argue, Anthony walked past them. Again this time, heading toward the conference room with a slight grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. He wasn't chasing revenge. He was after something heavier, accountability, discomfort, the kind that lingers. The station was about to feel it. The conference room wasn't anything special. Scuffed table, mismatched chairs, a flickering ceiling light, and a whiteboard still. Smudged with marker from months ago, Anthony took a seat at the far end, facing the door. He placed his blazer neatly over the back of the chair and laid his badge and credentials in plain view on the table. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Finally, the door creaked open. Chief Barrington stepped inside, clipboard in hand. Right behind her were officers Henshaw and Daly, both looking like men who'd been hit with the truth they weren't ready for. Henshaw had lost the cocky swagger. His frame was stiff now, guarded. Daly looked worse, his eyes bouncing from Anthony to the badge on the table and back again. Gentlemen, the chief said, keeping her voice even. Have a seat. Neither argued. Henshaw folded his arms as he sat, trying to hold on to some version of control. Daly leaned forward, elbows on the table, already sweating through his collar. Chief Barrington continued. This is Mr. Anthony He isn't from Internal Affairs. She looked at them, eyes hard. He is Internal Affairs. Anthony looked them both in the eye. Division Chief? Appointed 3 weeks ago. Silence. Long and cold. Daly opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Henshaw looked like his brain was still buffering, trying to catch up to what was happening. You've got to be kidding, he finally muttered. Anthony's response was calm. I'm not. You remember me? I do, Anthony said. Do you remember pulling me over? Daly cleared his throat. We didn't realize, of course you didn't. Anthony cut in. Let's not waste time pretending this was some honest mistake. He leaned forward, his voice steady but razor sharp. You saw a black man in a nice car in your town and jumped to a conclusion. You treated me like I didn't belong. Well, here we are. Barrington didn't say a word. She let him speak. She knew better. In the last 6 months, this department has received 23 official complaints. You know how many of them mention one of you by name? He let the pause settle. Half. Daly looked like he wanted to object, but Anthony raised a hand. Don't bother. We have footage. We have signed statements, civilian recordings, people whose phones were snatched, stops that turned confrontational for no reason. Search is done without any legal ground. Henshaw leaned forward now, jaw clenched. You were just another guy. You fit the profile. Anthony's eyebrow lifted. The profile? Please, do tell. I mean, we were doing our jobs. From where I sat, Anthony said coldly, your job looked a lot like intimidation. Daly gave a nervous chuckle. No one joined him. Chief Barrington finally broke her silence. Mr. Meriwether has full oversight here. This isn't a meet and greet. Anthony nodded. Starting today, both of you are under formal review. Your body cam archives will be pulled. Every use of force report you've filed in the last 12 months will be reviewed. We'll be speaking with every civilian who's named either of you. They said nothing. We'll start with last night, he added. That stop was filmed by a bystander. I already have the video. Henshaw sat back slowly. So this is revenge. Anthony shook his head. This is policy. I don't need revenge. I've got facts. And now I have the power to make them matter. The room held its breath. Then Anthony stood, collected as ever. This isn't personal, he said. It's systemic. You've spent years doing what you wanted, unchecked. That ends today. He slid his badge into his jacket pocket and headed for the door. Daly spoke for the first time. His voice cracked. Are we suspended? Anthony didn't turn around. Not yet. He paused at the doorframe. But after I finish looking through what you've left behind, you might wish you were. He stepped out, leaving the weight of the room behind him, heavier than any punishment he could have handed out on the spot. Word traveled fast. By midday, the precinct buzzed with murmurs. Eyes peeked around corners. Conversations slowed as Anthony passed by. It wasn't just that Internal Affairs had arrived early, it was that he'd already clashed with 2 of their own on the way in. Anthony felt it in the air. Back in his temporary office, a narrow corner room with too much fluorescent light and a chair that creaked like an old floorboard, he opened his notebook. He didn't write down names. He wrote down patterns. At the top, he circled one word, Discretion. It was the word officers loved to lean on. I used my discretion, but too often that became a mask, a cover for bias, for abuse, for profiling. A soft knock came. Chief Barrington leaned in. Got a minute? Sure. She stepped in, shut the door. They're shaken. They should be. You want them off duty for now? Anthony thought for a second. No, let them sweat. Let them see me. Let them wonder how deep I'm going. Barrington folded her arms. You've got their attention. Good. I want every officer in this building to think twice before they rest their hand on their belt, before they raise their voice, before they pull someone over just because they feel like it. Some are already saying this is a witch hunt, she warned. Anthony smiled. Then let's give them a fair trial. I want to speak at roll. Call tomorrow. Face them. You sure? Absolutely. Next morning, roll call at 7 a.m. sharp. The break room was packed. Officers leaned on walls and filing cabinets, some sipping bitter coffee, others checking their watches. A few rolled their eyes. Anthony walked in alone, no papers, no clipboard, just his calm, watchful eyes, and both hands in his pockets. I won't take much of your time, he began. I know most of you don't want me here. That's fine. I didn't come here to win popularity contests. A few glances exchanged, some faces unreadable. I came because this department has a pattern. I've read the files, I've watched the videos, and last night, I experienced it for myself. Silence. Solid and tense. I'm not here to punish you unless you've earned it. And if you have, trust me, I'll find out. Someone shifted. In the back, another cleared his throat. I don't care if you've been wearing that badge for 20 years or 2 months. If you treat people like suspects before you treat them like people, you're the problem. You let that settle. I'm not here to destroy your careers. I am here to restore the badge. To make sure folks in this city don't flinch when they see your lights in the mirror. He scanned the room. Daly and Henshaw stood in the back, quiet, cornered, eyes fixed forward. You will respect the people you serve, Anthony finished, or you will answer to me. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and every patrol vehicle's body cam footage is being pulled starting today. And with that, he walked out, leaving a silence more powerful than any warning. If you've got nothing to hide, he said over his shoulder, you've got nothing to worry about. And just like that, he walked out. Daly looked toward Henshaw. He's not bluffing. Henshaw just nodded slowly. No, he's not. Upstairs, Anthony stood alone in his office, pouring himself a weak cup of coffee. He opened his laptop. His inbox was already filling fast. Some officers wanted quiet conversations. Others had questions. A few, passing him in the hall, whispered thanks under their breath. Later that morning, Louise walked in, face unreadable. Whatever you said downstairs. It rattled the tree. Anthony took a slow sip. Good, let's see what falls. But this wasn't just about the department. It ran deeper. People looked at Anthony Merriweather and assumed he belonged in rooms like this. Degrees framed neatly on the wall. The polished presence of someone who always played by the rules and played them well. What they didn't know, what he rarely shared, was the night that changed everything. He was 17, sitting in the back of a squad car, hands cuffed, face pressed against cracked vinyl, cold, scared, and absolutely certain that his life might end for something he didn't do. It had been a normal walk home from his shift bagging groceries. Athens, Georgia. He'd taken a shortcut through a neighborhood he didn't usually pass. Through that night, a vague description went out. Tall, black, wearing a hoodie. That was all it took. He remembered the red-blue lights. The blinding command from a loudspeaker, the officer's boot pushing into his shoulder even after he was cuffed. He remembered the old woman across the street, not because she helped, but because she turned her head away. He sat in that car for nearly 40 minutes before another officer arrived, holding grainy CCTV stills. Not our guy, he muttered. No apology, no explanation. They just uncuffed him and told him to go. He walked home shaking, not from fear, but something deeper. Shame, rage, silence. That silence was the worst part. The quiet certainty that no one was going to fix it. Anthony never told his mom. She would have panicked. He never told his friends either. Instead, he started learning about law, about authority, and how power could be challenged. He didn't want to be a cop. At first, he hated the idea. But a professor changed that. You want the system to change? The professor had said. Then don't just complain. Be the one who writes the report. So he joined. Not for glory, but to learn. And what he learned changed everything. He kept his head down, listened more than he spoke. He watched. And when reports were manipulated, when force was abused, when truth was twisted in court, he didn't just remember. He documented. By 35, Anthony was already conducting internal audits for major departments across the South. In legal circles, his name carried weight. The guy who didn't flinch when the mess got deep. Some feared him. Others quietly thanked him, but none of it erased the memory of that cold squad car. So when word came that Macon PD was under fire, civil complaints piling up, many with a racial edge, he didn't hesitate. During his first call with Chief Barrington, he'd been clear. I don't do soft. If you want someone to write memos and smooth things over, I'm not your guy. She didn't flinch. We've had enough of soft. Now, in his office surrounded by notes, names, and timelines. Anthony thought back to that 17-year-old version of himself. Would that kid be proud of the man he became? Maybe, maybe not. But he'd recognize him, because even now, at 42, respected, unshakable, Anthony knew one thing. Most people still saw the hoodie before the badge, and that's why he did the job. Not for punishment, but for accountability. He stretched, looked out the window at the morning shift pulling in. Some of those officers still looked at him like he didn't belong. That was fine. He wasn't here to make friends. This wasn't personal anymore. It was systemic. By the end of that day, the precinct had changed. The casual greetings, gone. Officers passed him in silence. Even the admin staff triple-checked their files before handing them over. Good. That meant the system felt the pressure. He didn't start with accusations. He started with access. Full body cam footage. Not the polished training clips, but the raw stuff. He asked for ride logs, dispatch transcripts, internal memos dating back 18 months. Then came the interviews. He began with the rookies, fresh enough not to lie well. He sat each one down and opened with the same question. What do you think needs to change in this department? Most dodged it. Some shrugged. A few tried to guess what he wanted to hear, but a handful, they told the truth. A young Hispanic officer shared how Daly once joked about keeping zip ties in his glove box just in case. A black patrolwoman admitted she avoided overnight shifts now. She didn't trust Henshaw to back her up when it counted. These weren't complaints. They were patterns, recurring flags, echoes, consistent across different voices. Anthony cross-referenced every word, compared stories to paper trails. Most didn't line up. Meanwhile, Daly and Henshaw silent, but checking their computers more. Often keeping their desks unusually clean, like they knew the hammer was coming. Then, late Wednesday, it came. A plain manila envelope slid under his door. No name, no return address. Inside, 5 printed screenshots from body cam footage, each image a different traffic stop. All the drivers black, all the violations. Minor rolling stop, turn signal, window tint, but the expressions on the officers, faces smirking. Superior one even laughed. While intimidating a driver, Anthony sat at his desk, staring at the photos. Whoever left them didn't want praise. They wanted change, and so did he. He scanned the timestamps on the screenshots. 3 were dated months ago, 2 barely weeks old. The next morning, Anthony summoned Officer Cameron Ladd, a sharp-minded analyst who'd worked under 2 separate chiefs. I need metadata on these. Frames, he said, sliding the envelope across the desk. Find out who paused the footage here, who downloaded it. She nodded silently, no questions asked. Less than 2 hours later, she returned. Internal terminal. Username M. Arnett. Anthony raised a brow. Detective Martin Arnett. Downloaded 3 days ago. My guess printed during his lunch. Probably didn't want it traceable. Arnett had been around for 15 years. Not flashy, not loud. Didn't belong to any social circle in the department. Just did the work. And kept to himself. But he wasn't one to look away either. Anthony found him alone in the garage, inspecting his cruiser before the night shift. You got a minute? He asked. Arnett didn't flinch. You get the envelope. I did. Arnett leaned on the hood. I'm not looking for praise. I just can't watch this place rot from the inside. My kid's growing up here. I need to believe it can be better. You willing to make a statement? Anthony asked. Arnett paused. Off the record. For now. That's fine. Anthony said. You already made one when you passed that envelope. He walked away, grateful, but aware one brave man wasn't enough. He needed evidence, patterns, and most of all, something this department had long avoided, consequences. But what Anthony uncovered was uglier than he expected. The deeper he dug, the less shocked he felt, just more disgusted. It began with inconsistencies. Body cam footage didn't match written reports. Stops labeled as routine showed unnecessary aggression. Citations were issued without explanation. People yanked from their vehicles without cause, searched without consent. But that was just surface level. One video stopped him cold. Dashcam. Late night shift, a young black man, barely out of high school, stood beside his beat-up sedan. No weapon, no shouting. Just a quiet voice asking, what did I do wrong? Daly's voice responded, you looked nervous when you passed me. That's enough. Cut 2. The teen in cuffs. On the curb, the report omitted everything. No mention of fear. No mention of the kid's cracking voice when he asked if his mom could be called. Anthony stared at the paused frame, rewound, played again. That phrase, that's enough, rang in his head. Too many officers thought that was permission to act. A feeling was all it took. He dug deeper. Henshaw's last dozen. Force reports. 11 involved black men. 10 claimed the suspect had made a threatening gesture. Only 3 were supported by video. 1 report outright lied. The footage showed a man stepping backward, hands raised just before Henshaw slammed him into a wall. Anthony cross-referenced arrest logs, built timelines, matched timestamps, mapped footage. The patterns screamed louder than any frame. Came the final push. An anonymous email landed in the department inbox. Flagged and forwarded to his temp assignment. It read, If you want the truth, ask about the Monday lists. They're not written down, but everyone knows. Anthony blinked. Monday lists, he started asking, not directly, just lightly, especially to those who didn't hang out with Daly and Henshaw. It didn't take long. One younger officer let it slip. Every Monday, briefing included a casual list of target areas, neighborhoods where extra attention was expected, no paperwork, no memos, just suggestions. Low income, mostly black. You ever push back? Anthony asked. The officer shrugged. They didn't say go find something, but if you came back empty, they noticed. And who gives the Monday list? Most weeks, sometimes Clive. That was it. Anthony walked straight to Chief Barrington's office and dropped the files on her desk. This department has normalized harassment, he said. It's not covert, it's scheduled. Built into Monday briefings? She scanned the evidence, face tight. What do you want? Suspensions, Daly and Henshaw, while I finalize the report. If they're still out there, someone's going to get hurt. You have enough to back that up. He nodded. Yes. By morning, both were pulled from duty. Neither took it well. Daly had a full-blown tantrum in the locker room, slammed his badge on the table, yelling about politics and witch hunts. Henshaw was quieter, cold, just stared at Anthony, eyes narrow, jaw clenched, like a man who'd never been told no before. Anthony didn't flinch. He was already assembling the report, formatting names, times, bomb summaries. He'd submit it to the state attorney and the civilian review board by week's end. Still, something in his gut said it wasn't over. Something worse lay buried. He wasn't done digging. By Friday, everything had changed. Someone leaked the report or part of it. Local press ran the story. WMAS News parked outside the station. Headlines asked what the department wouldn't. Are officers targeting black residents based on verbal lists? Why are some body cam videos missing from review? Has the chief seen the footage? The department scrambled to contain it. Chief Barrington issued a calm statement confirming the audit and noting 2 officers were on administrative leave. No names, but everyone in Macon already knew. Anthony stayed inside. He wasn't after headlines. He was after the truth. And not everyone liked that. Voicemails started pouring in. Angry anonymous. Who do you think you are? You're tearing this town apart. Outsider. You don't belong. He expected the hate. What surprised him was the rest. A black store owner dropped by, shook his hand in silence. An elderly woman left a handwritten letter at the front desk. Thank you for making this place feel just a little safer. A high school senior emailed him. I want to be a cop now because someone like you made it mean something. But not everyone welcomed the change. A protest formed outside the station that afternoon, not for justice. Against it. Locals held signs. Support our police. This is a setup. And standing among them, arms folded, was Officer Henshaw. Jeans and a polo, but unmistakable. He didn't chant, didn't speak, just stood and stared at the building. Anthony watched from his office window, coffee in hand, not afraid, not done. That evening, Anthony truly began to understand the weight of what lay ahead. He'd been invited to speak at the emergency city council session. The chamber was full, not just with city officials, but with residents packed into rows. Some carried anger in their eyes, others clung to hope. Many just looked uncertain. A man in the third row, dressed neatly with a bow tie, stood and cleared his throat. My son was pulled over twice last month for nothing. He said he told me he was scared just driving to work. I thought he was exaggerating. But now, his voice broke, and he quietly took his seat. Next, a woman in her 40s rose to speak. We're not asking for this department to be torn down, she said. We just want it cleaned up. We want it to stand for something again. A councilman turned his gaze to Anthony. Do you really believe this can be fixed? Anthony stood slowly. The room fell still. I'm not offering miracles, he said, but I will offer this. No badge should outweigh the truth. If this department is going to serve everyone, then accountability begins now. A few claps echoed through the room. Some nodded. The shift had started. After the session, Chief Barrington approached Anthony in the hallway. You sounded like a mayor up there, she said. He chuckled softly. Let's not get carried away. But change was in motion. The cracks had widened. Officer Henshaw filed a formal grievance the next morning, accusing Anthony's process of bias. Officer Daly tried finding a lawyer, but no one in town took the case. Soon after, the Civilian Review Board held an emergency vote. Should the entire Macon Police Department be subject to a full external audit? The result was unanimous. Yes. Anthony's quiet inquiry had now grown into something larger. What started as a simple investigation was becoming a full rebuild of leadership, policy, and public trust. 2 weeks passed. The station didn't fall silent, but it felt heavier. Old routines, once automatic, now felt exposed. Office doors that once stood wide open, now closed slowly. Conversations paused when Anthony entered. Eyes met his, but didn't flinch away. He hadn't delivered another speech since the council meeting. No grand declarations. Just steady, deliberate work. Layer by layer, he pulled back the veil. Then, a major shift. Chief Barrington called Anthony into her office one morning. Her badge sat in a velvet-lined box next to her keyboard. I've done what I can, she said. But if this town wants to move forward, it needs a different voice, one not weighed down by mine. Anthony nodded. You're not quitting, he told her. You're making room. That matters. She gave him a firm look. Make it count. Her resignation made waves. The city quickly appointed an interim chief, Vivian Cross, a seasoned black officer with a record of reform, known for being no-nonsense and fiercely independent. Cross had cleaned up troubled departments before. She wasn't here to play politics. With Cross in charge and Anthony still leading the audit, momentum shifted. Mandatory retraining began. Every officer, starting with traffic stops, use of force protocols, and how civilian complaints were handled. These weren't just boring seminars. They were intensive hands-on workshops led by outside experts. Some officers resisted. This is too much, one muttered during roll call. Anthony overheard and responded calmly. You're welcome to find work somewhere else. That ended the discussion, but pushback didn't stop at the badge. A local radio host ranted for an hour about outsiders ruining tradition and cultural overreach. Anthony didn't reply. He didn't need to. The results were louder. In 2 weeks, resident complaints dropped. Locals started visiting precinct open houses. Church groups delivered lunch. Even high school students showed up for civic programs. Even the skeptics noticed something was different. Still, Anthony didn't let optimism blind him. One afternoon, Officer Cameron Ladd stepped into his office with a printout. This just came in, she said. Routine traffic stop. White. Pickup. Tinted windows. Driver recognized the officer, called him by name. Anthony raised an eyebrow. She remembered Officer Raymond. Ladd explained. Said he used to throw his weight around. But today, he looked her in the eye. Told her exactly why she was pulled over. No attitude. Just did the job. Anthony gave a quiet smile. It was progress. But it wasn't enough. He kept pushing. For permanent change, every patrol car was now required to have synced dual audio body cams. Disciplinary cases could no longer be hidden in internal reports. They had to be submitted to the Civilian Review Board. A new community liaison was appointed, responsible for rebuilding trust in the neighborhoods that had long felt ignored. Some older officers grumbled, but the younger ones, they leaned in, and the work continued. Officer Janelle Briggs had only served 2 years, but she asked to transfer into the newly formed Community Trust Unit, not for prestige, but because she believed the work mattered. Fresh out of the academy, Officer Malik Fenner once asked Anthony, during a meeting, how do we make sure we don't turn into what we came to fix? Anthony didn't hesitate. Accountability, every day. No shortcuts. Late nights became routine. Anthony spent them piecing together reports, checking data, cross-referencing testimonies. Every name in the files wasn't just a number. It was a real person. Someone stopped, questioned, hurt, forgotten. He wouldn't let them stay forgotten. The audit, 140 pages of raw facts, timelines, quotes, and footage logs, would be released publicly in a month. Anthony wouldn't be there to see it. By then, he'd be back in Atlanta, on to the next assignment. But he didn't want to be remembered. Not him. Not the controversy. What mattered was the shift, the growing awareness that trust isn't handed to a badge, it's earned. On his last day, Anthony stood alone in the squad parking lot. The morning heat clung to his shirt. Officers passed with short nods, some respectful, some automatic. He wasn't looking for thanks. He just wanted to know if they'd still meet his eyes. Most did. He closed the door to his temporary office with the audit in hand. Not a page softened, not a detail exaggerated, just truth. The station felt quieter. He moved through the halls for a final time, not to make a scene, just to say a quiet goodbye. A few officers offered thanks. One shook his hand, a couple avoided him, as expected. Near the exit, Chief Vivian Cross stopped him. Solid work, she said, tapping the folder. Facts are hard to fight. I don't need them to agree, Anthony replied. I just need them to know they're being watched. She smiled slightly. You sure you want to leave? He nodded. I was never supposed to stay. This was just a chapter. But you didn't treat it like that, she said, locking eyes with him. That's rare. He hesitated. I couldn't afford to. Outside, the media was gone. The protests had quieted. Across the street, at the same diner where he was once silently judged on his first night, a young black officer now ate breakfast on the patio. Anthony paused. That officer might never know the battles fought behind closed doors, but he'd walk into his shift with fewer targets on his back. And that mattered. Anthony drove away with the windows down, letting the air wash over him. Numbered ceremony. No applause, just the quiet satisfaction that for once power had been used to protect instead of harm. Later that week, in a modest college auditorium back in Atlanta, Anthony spoke to a small group of criminal justice students. No stage lights, just a folding chair, a mic, and eyes full of questions. A student in the front row asked, "Do you ever feel like it doesn't make a difference?" Anthony paused, then said, "Change is slow. Sometimes it hurts. But the goal isn't to fix everything in one swing. It's to stand between what people can get away with and what they should be accountable for." He gathered his papers and continued. Every system, every badge, every desk, Every court is only as good as the people who refuse to look away. So ask the hard questions. Speak up, even when your voice shakes. And when someone says, "You're wasting your time," he looked at the room, still silent. Ask them why it makes them so uncomfortable. There was no applause, just quiet thinking. The kind that doesn't leave when the room empties. And that was enough. Because real change doesn't look like celebration, it looks like files. Like policies. Like someone deciding silence won't win this time. Don't judge too quickly. You never know who you're speaking to. And more importantly, watching you?